The buttercream frosting wasn't just sugar, it was a weapon. Standing paralyzed in the center of the grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel, Maya felt the cold, sticky vanilla cream sliding down her eyelashes, blurring the sight of 300 of New York's elite gasping in unison. Patricia, her mother-in-law, stood wiping her manicured hands on a silk napkin, smiling like she'd just taken out the trash. But the deafening silence that followed wasn't caused by the cake. It was caused by Alexander Montclair, the billionaire who had never raised his voice in public, walking slowly towards the microphone. What happened next didn't just end a marriage. It destroyed a dynasty and exposed a secret that had been buried for 30 years. The morning of the Montclair Diamond Gala, the air inside the penthouse at 432 Park Avenue felt thinner than usual, as if oxygen were a luxury tax Maya couldn't afford. Maya stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror, staring at her reflection. She was 26, a pediatric nurse from Queens who still cut coupons for groceries out of habit, despite currently living in a $90 million apartment in the sky. She smoothed the fabric of her dress, a modest emerald green silk gown she had bought herself. It was beautiful, but in this world, beautiful wasn't enough. It had to be exclusive. "It hangs a bit loose around the hips, doesn't it?" The voice came from the doorway, sharp and sudden like the crack of a whip. Maya didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Patricia Montclair had a way of entering a room that made the temperature drop 10 degrees. "Good morning, Patricia," Maya said, forcing a smile as she turned. "I think it fits fine. I wanted something comfortable for tonight." Patricia walked into the room, her heels clicking rhythmically on the marble. She was 60, though her team of Swiss surgeons had frozen her face in a permanent state of ageless, icy disdain. She was the matriarch of the Montclair shipping empire, a woman who treated people like chess pieces, and her son like the king she had to protect. "Comfort is for pajamas, Maya," Patricia said, reaching out to pluck at the fabric of Maya's dress with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. "This is the Diamond Gala. The governor will be there. The board of directors. Isabella DuPont will be there." Maya flinched at the name. Isabella, the daughter of a French oil tycoon, a tall blonde equestrian who looked like she was born wearing diamonds. She was Alexander's ex-girlfriend, and the woman Patricia had always intended for him to marry. "I know who will be there, Patricia," Maya said softly. "Alexander likes this dress." Patricia let out a short, dry laugh. "Alexander is a man. He likes you because you're quaint, a novelty, like a rescue dog he picked up at the shelter." But tonight isn't about what Alexander likes. It's about the Montclair image. And frankly, dear, you look like you're going to a prom in New Jersey. Maya felt the familiar sting of tears pricking her eyes, but she swallowed them down. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry in front of this woman again. "Where is Alexander?" "He's in his study," Patricia said, turning to leave. "Handling business, something about the merger. I wouldn't disturb him if I were you. He needs to focus on real problems, not your wardrobe insecurities." With that, she swept out of the room, leaving a trail of Chanel No. 5 and anxiety in her wake. Maya took a deep breath and walked out of the bedroom, down the long, art-lined corridor, toward Alexander's study. She needed reassurance. She needed her husband to tell her that she belonged here, that the last 6 months of subtle insults and exclusion from family emails weren't driving a wedge between them. The door to the study was ajar. Maya raised her hand to knock, but stopped when she heard voices. "She's suffocating you, Alex," a male voice said. It was Thomas, Alexander's best friend and the company's CFO. "She's trying her best, Tom," Alexander's voice replied. He sounded exhausted. "Is she?" Thomas pressed. "Look, I like Maya. She's sweet. But tonight, the merger with the DuPont family depends on the perception of stability. Patricia is worried that Maya, that she doesn't fit the mold. Isabella is going to be there, and her father is watching." "I married Maya, not Isabella," Alexander snapped. "I know," Thomas said, his voice lowering. "But are you sure you didn't marry her just to piss off your mother? Because that's what the tabloids are saying. That's what the board thinks. If you don't control your wife tonight, if she embarrasses us in front of the DuPonts, the stock is going to tank." Maya froze. Her hand hovered over the mahogany wood. Just to piss off his mother, was that it? Was she just a pawn in a generational power struggle? Alexander had swept her off her feet in the hospital cafeteria where she worked. He had been charming, persistent, and seemingly uninterested in his own wealth. But since the wedding, he had grown distant, buried in work, leaving her to fend off Patricia's sharks alone. "I'll handle it," Alexander said finally. "I'll make sure she stays in the background." Stays in the background. Maya felt a cold stone settle in her stomach. She lowered her hand and backed away silently, retreating to the bedroom. She looked at the emerald dress in the mirror. She didn't see a wife anymore. She saw a liability. The Plaza Hotel ballroom was a sea of black tuxedos and gowns that cost more than Maya's parents' house. The chandeliers dripped with crystal, casting a golden light over the cream of society, a group of people who smiled with their teeth but watched with cold, calculating eyes. As the limousine pulled up to the curb, the flashbulbs of the paparazzi erupted like lightning. "Stay close to me," Alexander said, buttoning his tuxedo jacket. He didn't look at her. He was checking his watch. "And please, Maya, don't speak to the press. Just smile and keep moving." "I know the drill, Alex," she whispered, clutching her clutch so tightly her knuckles turned white. They stepped out. The noise was deafening. "Mr. Montclair, over here!" "Is it true the merger is in trouble?" "Maya, who are you wearing?" Alexander put a protective hand on the small of her back, but it felt mechanical. He guided her up the red carpet, nodding to the cameras but offering nothing. Inside, the atmosphere changed from chaotic to predatory. The noise settled into a sophisticated hum of gossip. As they entered the ballroom, heads turned. Maya felt the judgment wash over her physically. She saw the whispers behind champagne flutes. "That's the nurse. Look at the dress. She looks lost. Alexander!" The voice was melodious, perfect. Isabella DuPont glided towards them through the crowd. She was wearing a silver gown that looked like liquid mercury, clinging to a body sculpted by private trainers and Pilates. Around her neck sat a diamond choker that was likely a family heirloom. "Isabella," Alexander said, stopping. He smiled, a real smile, one Maya hadn't seen in weeks. "You look stunning. And you look tired, darling," Isabella purred, ignoring Maya completely. She reached out and straightened Alexander's tie, a gesture so intimate it made Maya's breath hitch. "Daddy is dying to talk to you about the Asian markets. He's over by the bar." "I should go say hello," Alexander said. He finally glanced at Maya. "Honey, why don't you find our table? I'll be right there." Maya started, but Isabella cut her off. "Oh, don't worry. I'll take good care of him," Isabella said, flashing a shark-like grin at Maya. "You go find the hors d'oeuvres. I hear the crab cakes are to die for." Before Maya could respond, Isabella had linked her arm through Alexander's and was steering him away. Alexander didn't look back. Maya stood alone in the middle of the dance floor. She felt small, invisible, and incredibly foolish. "Lost, are we?" Patricia appeared at her elbow, holding a glass of champagne. She looked triumphant. "He looks good with her, doesn't he?" Patricia said quietly, nodding toward Alexander and Isabella, who were now laughing with a group of elderly men in suits. They speak the same language. They understand the weight of the crown. "I'm his wife, Patricia," Maya said, her voice shaking. "Not an employee. For now." Patricia sipped her drink. "But tonight is a test, Maya, and frankly, you're failing. Look at you, you're slouching. You're holding that purse like it's a life raft. You don't belong here." "I belong wherever my husband is," Maya retorted, finding a sudden spark of anger. Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Do you? Then why is he over there, securing his future, while you're here arguing with his mother, let me give you some advice, purely out of charity. Don't make a scene. Don't try to be part of the conversation. Just sit down, look pretty, and when the cake is cut, disappear. It's the kindest thing you can do for him." Patricia walked away to greet a senator, leaving Maya trembling. Maya navigated her way to table 1, the head table. It was empty. She sat down, feeling the eyes of the room on her. She watched her husband across the room. He was animated, powerful, in his element, and he was standing next to Isabella, who looked like his queen. A waiter approached. "Champagne, ma'am." "Water," Maya said. "Please." She took a sip, trying to calm her nerves. She looked at the center of the room where a massive 5-tier cake stood. It was a masterpiece of white fondant and gold leaf, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Montclair Foundation. It was beautiful, fragile, and excessive. Just like this marriage, she thought. 20 minutes later, the lights dimmed. The chatter died down. Alexander walked to the stage, taking the microphone. He looked commanding. "Thank you all for coming." His voice boomed over the speakers. "Tonight is about legacy. It's about building a future that honors our past." The crowd applauded. Maya clapped softly. "And now," Alexander continued, "I'd like to invite the woman who made this all possible, the heart of the Montclair family, my mother, Patricia Montclair, to cut the ceremonial cake." The applause was louder this time. Patricia walked up the stairs, beaming. She took the microphone from Alexander. "Thank you, Alexander," she said, her voice dripping with false modesty. "I have dedicated my life to this family, to ensuring that the Montclair name remains pure, strong, and untarnished." She paused, her eyes scanning the room until they locked onto table 1. They locked onto Maya. "But a legacy is fragile," Patricia continued, going off script. The room went quiet. "It requires the right partnerships, the right breeding. Sometimes mistakes are made, lapses in judgment." Alexander stepped forward slightly, looking confused. "Mother?" Patricia ignored him. "Tonight, we celebrate excellence, and we discard what doesn't serve us." She gestured to the waiter. "Bring the knife." But she didn't just wait for the knife. She looked at Maya. "Maya, dear, come up here." Maya froze. The spotlight swung around, blinding her. "Come on," Patricia beckoned. "You're part of the family, aren't you? Come stand by your husband." Maya stood up on shaky legs. She sensed a trap, but refusing would cause a scene, the one thing Alexander had begged her to avoid. She walked to the stage, her heart hammering against her ribs. As she reached the platform, Alexander reached for her hand, but Patricia stepped between them. "Stand here, dear," Patricia said, positioning Maya right in front of the massive cake. "Front and center. Let everyone see the new Mrs. Montclair." Patricia picked up the silver cake server. It was heavy. She looked at the cake, then at the crowd, and finally at Maya. The smile dropped from her face, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated malice. "You know, Maya," Patricia whispered, away from the mic, but loud enough for Alexander to hear, "you really should have stayed in Queens." And then, with a speed that belied her age, Patricia didn't cut a slice. She jammed her hand behind the second tier of the cake, grabbed a massive handful of frosting and sponge, and in one fluid motion, shoved it directly into Maya's face. For 3 seconds, the world stopped turning. Maya stood frozen on the stage, the heavy, sugary mass of the cake sliding slowly down her left cheek and onto the shoulder of her emerald dress. The smell of vanilla and buttercream, usually comforting, was now suffocating. She couldn't see out of her left eye. She couldn't breathe. The shock was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left her gasping for air in a room that had suddenly been sucked dry of oxygen. The silence was absolute. It was a vacuum. 300 of the world's wealthiest people, senators, CEOs, tech moguls, were rendered mute. A fork clattered onto a china plate somewhere in the back, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Patricia Montclair stood next to her, wiping her hand on a white silk napkin offered by a trembling waiter. She didn't look horrified. She didn't look apologetic. She looked bored. "Oh dear," Patricia said, her voice amplified by the microphone she was still holding. It wasn't a whisper. It was a performance. "It seems I've slipped. Or perhaps you were just standing too close, Maya. You really must learn to respect personal space." A ripple of nervous, confused laughter bubbled up from the back of the room. The sycophants who thought this was some sort of avant-garde performance art or a scripted roast. Maya felt a tear cut a hot track through the frosting on her cheek. She raised a hand to wipe it away, her fingers trembling so violently she could barely control them. She wanted to run. She wanted to vanish. She looked toward the exit, calculating the distance, wondering if she could make it before she collapsed. But then, movement caught her eye. Alexander. He hadn't moved when the cake hit her. He hadn't rushed to grab a napkin. He had stood statue still, his face draining of all color, until he looked like a marble carving of a Roman emperor. But now he was moving. He didn't run to Maya. He walked toward his mother. His gait was slow, predatory. Every step echoed on the wooden stage. He stopped in front of Patricia, who was currently checking her diamond bracelet for frosting smears. "Alexander," Patricia said, dropping her voice to a hiss, though the mic picked up the sharp intake of her breath. "Don't make a scene. Get her a towel and get her out of here. We have guests." Alexander reached out, his hand, large and steady, wrapped around the stem of the microphone Patricia was holding. He didn't pull it away gently. He ripped it from her grip with a force that made the feedback whine through the speakers, causing half the room to cover their ears. He turned to the crowd. He didn't look at Maya yet. He looked at the board of directors at table 1. He looked at Isabella DuPont, who was smirking behind her wine glass. He looked at the governor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. It was the voice of a man who was watching a building burn down and had decided not to call the fire department. "Please keep your seats." He turned his body slightly so he could look directly at his mother while speaking to the room. "For 30 years, Alexander continued, Patricia Montclair has cultivated an image of perfection. She has told you that this family is built on honor, on legacy, on the right kind of people." Patricia's eyes widened. She stepped forward, reaching for the mic. "Alexander, stop this immediately. You are drunk." Alexander sidestepped her effortlessly. "She just assaulted my wife," he said, his voice rising an octave, the raw anger finally bleeding through. "She humiliated the woman I love in front of the entire city. But that isn't the worst thing she's done." A murmur went through the crowd. Phones were out now. 100 glowing screens were recording. "Alexander!" Thomas, the CFO, jumped up from his table. "Cut the mic, now!" "Sit down, Thomas!" Alexander roared, the sound booming off the vaulted ceiling. Thomas froze, sinking back into his chair. Alexander took a breath, smoothing his tuxedo jacket. "You all came here to celebrate the merger with DuPont Industries. A merger my mother orchestrated. A merger she claimed was necessary to save Montclair Shipping from bankruptcy." He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a folded sheaf of papers. He held them up. "But the company isn't bankrupt," Alexander said. "We posted record profits last quarter. The only thing that is bankrupt is my mother's personal estate." Patricia's face went grey. "Alexander, don't." "Gambling debts," Alexander said, throwing the papers into the air. They fluttered down like confetti around Patricia's feet. $200 million in losses in Monte Carlo and Macau over the last 5 years. She's been siphoning money from CERN, the foundation, the charity money intended for children's hospitals, to cover her tracks. The DuPont merger wasn't about business. It was a payout. Isabella's father agreed to cover Patricia's debts in exchange for control of my company. And the price? The price was that I had to marry Isabella. The room erupted. The gasp was so collective, it sucked the air out of the room. Isabella DuPont stood up, knocking her chair over, her face a mask of fury. Alexander turned to Maya. He dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. He walked over to her, his expression shifting from rage to profound sorrow. He took off his tuxedo jacket, revealing his white dress shirt, and wrapped it gently around her shoulders, covering the ruined dress. He reached up with his thumb and wiped a dollop of frosting from her eyelid, his touch incredibly tender. "I am so sorry," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I thought I could fix it quietly. I thought I could protect you without destroying her. I was wrong." He turned back to his mother one last time. Patricia was trembling, staring at the scattered papers on the floor. "You wanted a reaction, Mother?" Alexander said, loud enough for the front tables to hear without the mic. "You got one. You're fired. Security will escort you out of the building. If you set foot in the office tomorrow, I'll have you arrested for embezzlement." He wrapped his arm around Maya's waist. "Come on, Maya, let's go home." He guided her down the stairs. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. No one spoke. No one tried to stop them. As they walked down the long aisle towards the double doors, Maya looked back over her shoulder. Patricia Montclair was standing alone on the stage, surrounded by the wreckage of her lies, with cake frosting on her hands and the eyes of New York watching her fall. The silence in the back of the Bentley was heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of survival. Maya sat huddled in the corner, clutching Alexander's tuxedo jacket around her like armor. She had used a pack of wet wipes from the car's console to clean the worst of the cake from her face, but her hair was still matted with sugar, and her skin felt sticky and gross. Alexander was on his phone, typing furiously. He hadn't looked up since they left the plaza. "Alex?" Maya whispered. He stopped typing immediately and threw the phone onto the seat next to him. He turned to her, reaching out to take her hand. His grip was tight, desperate. "Are you okay?" he asked. "We're almost to the hotel. I didn't want to go back to the penthouse. She has a key, and I don't want you near her tonight." Maya struggled to find the word. "I'm in shock, I think. Did you mean it? About the embezzlement?" Alexander sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Every word. I found out 3 days ago. That's why I've been so distant. I've been working with forensic accountants around the clock to trace the funds before I confronted her. I wanted to have the evidence locked down so she couldn't spin it." "You were going to send your mother to prison?" "I was going to give her a choice," Alexander said, looking out the window at the blurring lights of Fifth Avenue. "Retire quietly, go to a facility for her addiction, and I cover the debts. Or face the board. But after what she did tonight," his jaw tightened, "she made the choice for me." The car pulled up to the Pierre. It was another hotel, but Alexander kept a private suite here for overseas clients. It was neutral ground. As they entered the lobby, the staff, professional as always, pretended not to notice the green stain on Maya's dress or the fierce intensity in Alexander's eyes. They were whisked up to the 39th floor. Once the door clicked shut, the adrenaline finally crashed. Maya sat on the edge of the bed and started to cry. Not polite, silent tears, but deep, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Alexander was there in an instant, kneeling on the floor between her knees, holding her hands. He didn't say anything. He just let her cry. He let her release the humiliation, the fear, the months of pent-up inadequacy. "I felt so stupid," she choked out eventually, standing there, everyone laughing. "They weren't laughing at you, Maya," Alexander said fiercely. "They were horrified. You handled it with more grace than anyone in that room deserves." He stood up and walked to the minibar, pouring a glass of water and handing it to her. "Go take a shower. Wash it off. I've ordered some clothes for you. They'll be up in an hour. We're not going anywhere tomorrow." Maya nodded and went into the bathroom. As the hot water hit her skin, melting the sugar and the hairspray, she watched the water swirl pink and white down the drain. She scrubbed her skin until it was raw. She wanted to scrub off the feeling of Patricia's judgment. When she stepped out, wrapped in a plush robe, Alexander was sitting at the small dining table, his laptop open. The TV was on, muted. Maya glanced at the screen. It was a news channel. The headline banner read, "Cake-tastrophe at the Plaza. Montclair dynasty implodes." "They're already talking about it?" Maya asked, horrified. "It's trending on Twitter," Alexander said grimly. "#1 worldwide. But that's not the problem." "What is?" Alexander turned the laptop around. "My mother isn't going quietly. She just released a statement through her PR firm." Maya leaned in to read the text on the screen. Statement from Patricia Montclair. "It is with a heavy heart that I must address the outburst by my son, Alexander, at tonight's gala. While we love Alexander dearly, he has been under significant strain lately due to the unstable mental state of his wife, Maya. The unfortunate incident with the cake was a result of Maya's intoxication and a physical altercation she initiated. My son's subsequent accusations of financial impropriety are merely the delusions of a man being manipulated by a partner seeking to isolate him from his family. We ask for privacy as we seek help for both of them." Maya read it twice. Her blood ran cold. "She's lying. There were 300 witnesses." "She knows that," Alexander said, standing up and pacing the room. "But she also knows that half those people are on her payroll or owe her favors, and the other half don't care about the truth. They care about the stock price. If she can paint me as unstable and you as a gold-digging alcoholic, she can trigger a clause in the company bylaws." "What clause?" "The competency clause," Alexander said. "If the CEO is deemed mentally unfit or under undue malicious influence, the board can vote to suspend his powers and appoint an interim CEO. And the interim CEO would be her," Alexander finished, "or her puppet, likely Thomas." Maya sank into a chair. "She smashed cake in my face, and now she's going to take your company because of it? She's trying to gaslight the world, Maya." Alexander grabbed his phone, but she forgot one thing. "What? I'm not my father. I don't roll over." He dialed a number. "Elias, it's Alexander. Wake up. We're going to war. I want the forensic files sent to the district attorney tonight. And Elias, get the security footage from the plaza, every angle. I want the world to see exactly who attacked who." He hung up and looked at Maya. The softness was gone from his eyes, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "Get some sleep, Maya. Tomorrow is going to be ugly." The next morning, the sun rose over Central Park, indifferent to the chaos unfolding in the financial district. Maya woke up to the sound of shouting. She bolted upright. Alexander was in the living area of the suite, shouting into his phone. "I don't care what the bylaws say, Thomas. You freeze my access, and I burn the whole thing down. You think I don't know about the offshore accounts in the Caymans? You think I don't know you helped her do it?" He slammed the phone down on the desk so hard the screen cracked. Maya walked out, tightening her robe. "Alex?" He spun around, his face haggard. He clearly hadn't slept. "They froze the corporate cards. They've locked me out of the company email server. The board is calling an emergency meeting at noon to vote on my suspension." "Can we stop them?" "Elias is trying to get an injunction," Alexander said, rubbing his temples. "But Patricia moves fast. She has Isabella's father pressuring the board members. They're threatening to pull the Asian contracts if I stay in charge." A knock on the door made them both jump. Alexander motioned for Maya to stay back. He walked to the door and looked through the peephole. He sighed and opened it. Standing in the hallway was Isabella DuPont. She wasn't wearing an evening gown today. She was wearing a sharp white power suit that cost more than a car. She held a crocodile-skin briefcase and wore sunglasses, which she slowly removed as she stepped into the room uninvited. "Room service," she drawled, looking around the suite with a critical eye. "A bit of a downgrade from the penthouse, isn't it, darling?" "Get out, Isabella," Alexander said, not closing the door. Now. Is that any way to treat the woman who is about to save your life?" Isabella walked over to the sofa and sat down, crossing her legs. She glanced at Maya. "Hello, nurse. You look rested, considering. Maya stepped forward, her hands balled into fists. "What do you want?" Isabella ignored her and looked at Alexander. "Daddy is very upset, Alex. The merger is in shambles. The stock is down 12% this morning. This little domestic drama of yours is expensive." "It's not a drama," Alexander said. "It's a crime. My mother is a thief. Your mother is a survivor," Isabella corrected. "And she has a proposition." She slid the briefcase across the coffee table. "What is this?" Alexander asked, not touching it. "An exit strategy," Isabella said. "Sign the papers. You step down as CEO voluntarily. You cite personal reasons. You keep your trust fund, you keep the penthouse, and you get a generous severance package. $50 million. And Patricia? Patricia stays on as chairwoman. I take over as CEO, Isabella smiled, and everyone goes home happy. The investigation goes away. The DA drops the inquiry because, well, Daddy knows the DA very well. And if I refuse? Isabella's smile vanished. Then we release the rest of the footage. What footage? Maya asked. Isabella pulled a tablet from her bag. Did you know, Maya, that your husband has a bit of a temper? We have a lovely video from 3 years ago. A bachelor party in Vegas. Alexander gets into a fight with a bouncer. Looks very violent. Very unstable. I was defending a woman the bouncer was harassing, Alexander snapped. Context is so boring, though, isn't it? Isabella tapped the screen. The media loves a villain. With Patricia's statement about your mental health and this video, the narrative writes itself. The violent billionaire and his enabling wife. You'll lose the company, Alexander. You'll be tied up in litigation for a decade. And you, she pointed a manicured nail at Maya, you will be destroyed. The press will dig into your life, your parents' tax returns, your brother's parking tickets, everything. Maya felt sick. This was a shakedown, a high-stakes billion-dollar blackmail. Alexander looked at the briefcase. He looked at Maya. He looked tired, defeated. If I sign, Alexander whispered, Maya is left alone? Completely, Isabella said. We forget she ever existed. Alexander reached for the briefcase. No, Maya said. Alexander froze. Maya. No, Maya said louder. She walked over and put her hand on top of Alexander's, stopping him from opening the latch. She turned to Isabella. You think you can bully us? Maya asked, her voice shaking but gaining strength. You think because I didn't go to boarding school in Switzerland that I don't know how a bully works? Isabella laughed. Oh, honey, this isn't a playground. This is the real world. In the real world, Maya said, people go to jail for fraud and for blackmail. Only if you can prove it, Isabella smirked. Maya reached into the pocket of her robe and pulled out her phone. She turned the screen around to face Isabella. The voice recorder app was running. The timer was at 4:32. Isabella's face went pale. New York is a one-party consent state, Maya said, quoting a fact she had learned from a cop friend in Queens years ago. I didn't need your permission to record this conversation. You just admitted to conspiring to blackmail my husband, obstructing justice with the DA, and covering up embezzlement. The silence in the room was electric. Alexander looked at Maya with wide, stunned eyes. Then a slow grin spread across his face. You recorded it? He asked. Oh, every word, Maya said. She looked at Isabella. So here is my counteroffer. You get out of my suite. You call your father and tell him the merger is dead. And you tell Patricia that if she doesn't resign by noon, I upload this recording to the internet. And I won't just tag the DA. I'll tag TMZ, the New York Times, and the SEC. Isabella stood up. Her composure was cracking. She snatched her briefcase. You have no idea who you are messing with, Isabella spat. I'm messing with a thief in a nice suit, Maya said calmly. Get out. Isabella stormed to the door. She slammed it so hard the windows rattled. Alexander stared at the door for a moment, then turned to Maya. He picked her up and spun her around, burying his face in her neck. You are incredible, he laughed, the sound pure and relieved. I love you so much. I love you too, Maya said, holding him tight. Now let's go fire your mother. But as they celebrated, Maya's phone pinged. A text message. She looked at it. It was from an unknown number. Nice try with the recording. But you should check your email. We found something from your past, Maya. Something you didn't tell Alexander. 12 p.m. Boardroom. Be there, or the world knows about the baby. Maya dropped the phone. Her blood froze. Maya, Alexander asked, pulling back. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maya stared at him, her throat constricting. The baby. Maya stammered. We have to go to the office. That's the plan, Alexander said, grabbing his jacket. Let's finish this. He didn't see the terror in her eyes. He didn't know that while he was fighting for his company, she was about to fight for a secret she had buried 6 years ago. A secret that could actually end their marriage faster than any cake or embezzlement scandal ever could. The elevator ride down from the hotel suite felt like a descent into the underworld. The mirrored walls reflected Maya's pale face, her eyes wide with a terror that had nothing to do with corporate espionage and everything to do with the skeleton she had locked in her closet 6 years ago. Alexander was energized, his thumb flying over his phone screen as he coordinated with Elias and his legal team. He looked like a general going to war, confident in his arsenal. He didn't know the enemy had a nuke. Alexander, Maya said. Her voice was barely a whisper. He didn't hear her at first. Elias says the board is already seated. They've locked the doors, but security still answers to me. Mostly. We can get in. Alex, please, she said, louder this time, grabbing his wrist. He stopped, looking down at her. The joy of their earlier victory in the hotel room faded as he saw the trembling in her hands. Maya? What is it? Is it the text? Maya nodded. She couldn't breathe. The air in the elevator felt thick, like water. She pulled her phone out and handed it to him. Alexander read the text message. Nice try with the recording. Be there, or the world knows about the baby. He stared at the screen for a long time. The numbers of the floors ticked down above the door. 20, 19, 18. What baby, Maya? Alexander asked softly. His voice wasn't angry, which somehow made it worse. It was confused. Maya closed her eyes. I was 19, she started, the words tearing out of her throat like jagged glass. I was just out of high school. I was working 2 jobs. My dad had just had his stroke. And I met a guy. He told me he loved me. He told me we'd figure it out. Alexander didn't move. He just watched her. When I got pregnant, Maya continued, tears spilling over, he left. He changed his number. I was alone. I had $300 in my bank account. I couldn't feed myself, let alone a child. I wanted to keep him, Alex. God, I wanted to keep him so bad. She choked back a sob. But I knew. I knew if I kept him, we'd both starve, or he'd grow up in the system. So I found a family. A good family in Ohio. They were doctors. They couldn't have kids. I gave him to them the day he was born. I signed the closed adoption papers, and I walked out of the hospital empty-handed. She looked up at him, expecting disgust, expecting him to see her as damaged goods. I never told you because I didn't want you to think I was the kind of woman who abandons her family. And now your mother knows. She's going to tell the world I have an illegitimate child. She's going to say I'm a liar. The elevator dinged. They were at the lobby. The doors opened, revealing the bustling hotel foyer, but neither of them moved. Alexander looked at the floor. He took a deep breath. For a terrifying moment, Maya thought he was going to walk away. She thought, this is it. This is the deal breaker. Then he reached out and took the phone from her hand. He slipped it into his pocket. You didn't abandon him, Maya, Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion. He stepped closer and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away the tears. You saved him. You made the hardest decision a mother can make because you loved him more than you loved your own happiness. That isn't shameful. That is heroic." Maya stared at him, stunned. You don't care." "I care that you went through that alone," Alexander said fiercely. "I care that you've been carrying that pain by yourself. But I do not care what my mother thinks of it. If she thinks she can use your sacrifice as a weapon, she has severely underestimated us." He took her hand, interlacing their fingers so tightly it hurt. "We are going into that room," Alexander said, his eyes hard as flint. "And we are going to tell the truth. Not their twisted version of it. Ours. Are you ready?" Maya took a shaky breath. She looked at this man, this billionaire who could have had anyone, but chose her and was choosing her again right now. "I'm ready," she said. The drive to Montclair Tower was a blur of police sirens and adrenaline. When they arrived, the paparazzi were already swarming the entrance. Patricia had leaked the location of the emergency meeting. She wanted an audience for the execution. Alexander didn't stop for questions. He used his body as a shield, guiding Maya through the flashing lights and into the lobby. "Mr. Montclair, is it true you're stepping down? Maya, do you have a comment on the allegations?" They ignored them all. They marched past the security desk, where the guards, recognizing the true alpha in the room, stepped aside without a word, and headed for the executive elevator. The boardroom was on the 50th floor. It was a cavernous room with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city Patricia Montclair thought she owned. When Alexander kicked the double doors open, the room went silent. 12 board members sat around the long mahogany table. They were old money, men and women who valued discretion above all else. At the head of the table sat Patricia. She looked refreshed, her hair perfect, sipping a sparkling water. Next to her sat Isabella, looking smug, and a man Maya didn't recognize, a lawyer, presumably. "You're late," Patricia said coolly, checking her diamond watch. "We were just about to vote on your removal, Alexander. Clause 14B, conduct unbecoming of a CEO." "I'm still the chairman," Alexander said, walking to the other end of the table. He didn't sit. He stood, looming over them. "And this meeting is a sham." "Is it?" Patricia stood up. She picked up a remote control and pointed it at the projection screen on the wall. "I think the board deserves to know who they are really in business with. You claim I am dishonest, Alexander? You claim I am the liability? Let's talk about your wife." She clicked the button. A photo appeared on the screen. It was a grainy scan of a hospital document. A birth certificate. "Leo," Patricia read the name. "Born 6 years ago. Mother, Maya Jenkins. Father, unknown." The board members murmured. They shuffled papers. This was scandalous. In their world, illegitimate children were secrets kept in Swiss boarding schools, not exposed on projection screens. "Maya lied to you, Alexander," Patricia said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "She lied to all of us. She has a child out of wedlock, a child she abandoned. How can we trust the character of a woman who throws away her own flesh and blood? And how can we trust a CEO who is married to such instability?" Isabella chimed in. "It speaks to a lack of moral fiber. If she can hide a child, what else is she hiding? Corporate secrets? Insider trading?" All eyes turned to Maya. Maya felt the floor sway. This was her nightmare. Her deepest wound was being projected in 4K resolution for a room full of strangers to judge. But then she felt Alexander's hand squeeze hers. "Heroic," he had said. Maya let go of his hand. She stepped forward. "Turn it off," she said. Patricia laughed. "Touches a nerve, does it? I said, turn it off." Maya's voice rang out, clear and strong. It wasn't the voice of a victim. It was the voice of a mother. She walked towards the screen, standing in the light of the projector so the words were written across her skin. "His name is Leo," Maya said, addressing the board directly. "And I didn't abandon him. I saved him." The room went quiet. "I was a teenager," Maya said, looking from face to face. "I was starving. I had nothing. Patricia Montclair has never known what it is to be hungry. She has never known what it is to look at a baby and know that your love isn't enough to keep them warm." She pointed at Patricia. "You call it a lack of moral fiber? I gave my son to a family who could give him the world because I loved him enough to let him go. That is not a scandal, Patricia. That is love, something you clearly know nothing about." One of the board members, an older woman named Mrs. Higgins, took off her glasses. She looked at Maya with a sudden softness. "But you," Maya continued, her voice rising, "you dug up the name of a 6-year-old boy. You invaded the privacy of an innocent family in Ohio. You weaponized a child to save your own skin. That isn't just immoral. It's evil." "Enough," Patricia slammed her hand on the table. "This is a boardroom, not a soap opera. The point is, she is a liability. And you, Alexander, are compromised." Alexander stepped up beside Maya. "The only person compromised here, Mother, is you." He pulled his phone out. "You wanted to talk about secrets? Let's talk about secrets." He plugged his phone into the AV system on the table. "Maya recorded a conversation this morning. I think you should all hear it." Patricia's eyes widened. Isabella bolted upright. "Don't you dare!" Isabella hissed. Alexander hit play. Isabella's voice filled the room, amplified by the surround sound speakers. "Daddy is very upset, Alex. The unfortunate incident with the cake was a result of Maya's intoxication. We release the rest of the footage. You'll lose the company, Alexander. Daddy knows the DA very well." The recording was crystal clear. It was undeniable proof of blackmail, conspiracy, and admission of the fraud regarding the merger. The board members were no longer murmuring. They were glaring. They were looking at Patricia and Isabella with the kind of cold fury that destroys careers. "This is doctored," Isabella screamed. "It's AI. It's fake." "It's time-stamped," Alexander said calmly, "and I've already sent a copy to the district attorney, and to your father, Isabella." Isabella checked her phone. She went pale. Her father was calling. Alexander looked at the board. "My mother embezzled $200 million. She tried to sell this company to the DuPonts to cover her gambling debts, and when I caught her, she attacked my wife and tried to blackmail me." He leaned over the table, staring his mother in the eyes. "I move for the immediate removal of Patricia Montclair from the board of directors, and the immediate termination of all negotiations with the DuPont family." "Seconded," Mrs. Higgins said immediately. "Thirded," said another member. "All in favor?" Alexander asked. Every hand in the room went up, except Patricia's. The fall of the House of Montclair, or rather, the rot inside it, was swift and brutal. Security didn't just escort Patricia out. The police were waiting in the lobby. The forensic accountants had done their job fast. Embezzlement is a white-collar crime, but blackmail is a felony. And when you combine the two, not even the best lawyers can save you. As Patricia was led away in handcuffs, shielding her face with a scarf, she didn't look at Alexander. She looked at the floor, finally stripped of the arrogance that had been her armor for 40 years. Isabella fared no better. Her father, furious at the public humiliation and the recording, cut her off before she even left the building. She was seen hailing a yellow taxi, her crocodile bag clutched to her chest, looking like a displaced queen with nowhere to go. Up in the boardroom, the atmosphere was somber, but relieved. Alexander shook hands with the board members. He reassured them. He was the leader they needed, calm, ethical, and unwavering. When the last of them left, Maya and Alexander were alone in the massive room. The projector was off. The screen was blank. Alexander walked over to the window, looking out at the skyline. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the city. Maya walked up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head on his back. "It's over," she whispered. Alexander turned around in her arms. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were clear. "It's over. We lost the DuPont merger. The stock is going to take a hit, and my family name is mud for a few weeks. We can rebuild," Maya said. "We will," Alexander smiled, "but not today." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya blinked. What is that? I bought this 3 months ago, Alexander said. I was going to give it to you at the gala before the cake. He opened the box. Inside wasn't a diamond. It was a simple gold locket. Maya opened it. Inside was a tiny picture of her and Alexander, and on the other side, an inscription. Family is what you make it. I don't care about the dynasty, Maya, Alexander said softly. I don't care about the legacy. I care about us. I want to build a house that doesn't have glass walls. I want a home. Maya touched the locket, tears stinging her eyes again. But these were happy tears. About Leo, Alexander started, treading carefully. I don't want to disrupt his life, Alex, Maya said quickly. He's happy. I keep tabs on him. From a distance. I just want him to be happy. I know, Alexander nodded. But we can set up a trust. Anonymous, for his college, for his future. We can make sure he never has to worry about money, ever. Maya looked at him, her heart swelling so much she thought it might burst. You would do that. He's part of you, Alexander said simply. So he's important to me. He kissed her. It wasn't a performative kiss for the cameras. It was slow, deep, and full of promises that he actually intended to keep. Let's go home, Alexander said. I have a sudden craving for cake. But maybe chocolate this time? And on a plate? Maya laughed, a genuine, bubbling sound that filled the empty boardroom. Deal. But I'm cutting it. They walked out of the tower hand in hand, stepping out into the cool evening air. The paparazzi were still there, shouting questions, desperate for a quote. Alexander stopped. He raised a hand for silence. My wife and I have no comment on the legal proceedings, Alexander said, his voice carrying over the crowd. But I will say this. The Montclair Company is under new management, honest management. He looked at Maya, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like the poor girl from Queens or the imposter in the palace. She felt like a queen. And, Alexander added, winking at her, we are going to need a new dry cleaner. He guided her into the waiting car, and as the door closed, blocking out the noise of the world, Maya knew that the glass castle had shattered, but something much stronger had been built in its place. And that is the story of how a single slice of cake brought down an empire. It's a reminder that true class isn't about what you wear or how much money is in the bank. It's about how you treat people. Patricia thought she could crush Maya with humiliation, but she forgot that pressure is what turns coal into diamonds. Alexander proved that a real partner stands by your side when the world turns against you, and that secrets lose their power when they are met with love and acceptance. What do you think? Did Patricia get what she deserved? And would you have forgiven Alexander for not seeing his mother's true colors sooner? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. We have a lot more drama coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.